It's 420.
Nice. Hello, hello. Oh, abrupt stop. Abrupt stop. And then the music's off. Hey there.
Happy 420, everybody. Now 421.
421. Happy 421.
We're a
Hey
minute
guys. How you doing, Alicia? How you doing, Zach?
Not too bad. How are you?
Doing okay. Doing okay. Another week is coming to an end, so that's nice. Hi, Kyle. How are you doing today, friend?
I am tired. I slept like
yeah.
absolutely shit last night. Didn't get up till noon, and I already can't keep my head above the pillow. So I'm laying in bed listening today.
Oh, I'm
Nice.
glad you joined us. And Shelby, hello.
Hi, guys.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm just waking up too. I worked last night.
Oh, did you?
So thank you guys. I just saw and I was like, yes, I have to participate today.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. You know what? If you don't mind, maybe we'll make you an impromptu guest and you can tell us a little bit about your efforts and what you're doing in your state.
Absolutely. I would love to be doing that.
Oh, awesome. Well, we'll just incorporate you in then. So
Okay. And I'll be in and out too. I got to get my oldest to work and I'll start driving, but I'll keep listening in and all the good things.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everybody in Facebook land who's joining us on our 420 weekly session with me and Drew. We are going to chat about a few things today. The session started on Tuesday. So there's a few, I know.
Brace for impact.
It's true. Every time the legislative session is happening across the country, patients and industry players alike, we never know what to brace for. And this session is no different. We have a few cannabis bills that are percolating out there. Some of them are getting some new language that got pulled from committee this week. And so we'll be seeing some stuff in what Vickers bill will look like and shape into. I know that JDP, Jennifer Daly Provost, has got a bill that's being crafted. We'll see what that turns into. Hopefully something pretty positive for the space as a whole. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's always a rough go for those who follow any kind of legislation. You know that what starts at the beginning of the session is rarely the same thing at the end of the session. A lot can happen during committee hearing. A lot can happen with amendments and floor debates. And sometimes just overall things just die and they never progress. Yeah, Zach, you have a question out of the gate, friend. What's up?
Yeah, I was just wondering, do we know if there's anything positive coming? I just heard that Puff Hemp, one of the best concentrate companies, is going out of business. And so all these hemp companies that are trying to be legit are going out of availability for patients. Is there any opportunities that they have for more cultivation or for lower pricing or anything that you know of?
I haven't seen anything in legislation that is catering to those concerns necessarily. And a lot of that has to do with a few mixed things. We're dealing with a market that has these boutique highs, these synthetics that are out there. So legitimate businesses, good, clean, quality CBD businesses who aren't messing with the synthetics and all these derivatives are having a hard time staying open. Because how can you compete with boutique highs that aren't requiring a medical card? So there are people who are so desperate that they would rather use these synthetics that give them a high they think is medicine. And Shelby and I can talk about, highs aren't always meaning medicine. That's what they're gravitating towards. So our legitimate operators are going under. Legitimate CBD operators who choose not to play with the synthetic game. I know one of our advisory board members decided to close up shop here in Utah and left the state. He was not going to deal with any more of what the state was condoning and what they were not. They were being a little too hard and strict on the real players, the legitimate players, and letting some shadier practices happen in the state. And they're learning. I think our state is learning that some of these practices are not healthy. It is taking healthcare professionals and patient advocates speaking up. Shelby, for those people who don't know, Shelby is a nurse. She's a cannabis nurse. Is it Arizona, hon, that you're based out of?
Yes.
Arizona. She's based out of Arizona. So her, and we'll let her give her some mic time. She's working on trying to help educate our medical professionals a little more about cannabis and its efficacy. And I think when we get our medical professionals educated a little more, we'll start to see a shift in the market again, where you won't see this gold rush towards these synthetic boutique highs, because people will start to understand they're not as healthy for us as we think they are. And yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, Zach, but I do feel for those vendors who are trying to be legitimate operators and are caught sort of in this mess of regulations and mismatching of laws and rules. It's hard to decipher sometimes. Anyway, Shelby, while we still have you and you're not driving and traveling, one of the topics I wanted to bring up today, right before I came online, I got a question sent to me from one of the cannabis magazines, and they are asking me to do a little short op-ed on a particular topic, because I am a medical cannabis patient advocate. And the question is this, and I would love to get your response to it, because it is something of, I think, let me just ask the question. It says, do you think the needs of the medical cannabis, do you think the needs of medical cannabis patients are being overlooked as states transition into allowing adult use access? So what are your thoughts? You're in Arizona, so I'd love to hear what you think.
I would love to share my viewpoint. Absolutely. Multiple dispensaries that I've spoken with out here, they're seeing a lack of medical patients coming in because the state has opened up to recreational. So it's really, this push, and it's been disheartening, especially since I've been a registered cannabis nurse the last 8 years and a medical patient. We're seeing that it is really just this money rush. They're linking with brands, it's all about the labels, the viewpoint, just kind of highlighting those things. And, for bud tenders, especially, not giving the proper education and training and having, the sit down with what they're already on, let's say, for pharmaceutical route, because we need to incorporate that, especially if patients are on medications already, how we can decrease the polypharmacy. I will definitely say that it has not been a sit down conversation with patients. Usually morning time is the most appropriate when people are struggling to get out of bed, and just make it into the dispensary, and not, having that comfort, compassion, the questions answered. And we need to recognize that each of us, our ACS is different. So something may work for one person and something may not work for the other person. So it's kind of just been like, here's this, and we think this will work best. Well, there's no follow-up or monitoring how the effects are for them, what's providing the most comfort. So it is kind of this, you go in and you're just playing with what you've been given. And that's where really at bedside, I still am bedside. We're seeing at bedside side effects, especially, the increase of THC and the amount that is put in these products. It's causing different side effects related to their medical conditions.
Sure. It's exasperating some.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a misnomer in the cannabis space. I think a lot of people who come into it early, in the early years, always think the THC is the medicine part, and that if you're not feeling high, you're not getting the medicine and the care that you need. I think over time we have learned that these other cannabinoids are working synergistically, and it's not always about the high. A high isn't indicative of health,
Correct.
And it's always been the common slogan in the cannabis space is start low and go slow, meaning, titrating up to a dose that makes sense to you. medicating to symptom relief and not to just a high, so that it
Absolutely.
is,
Advocating for that is most definitely prominent and really something we need to continue utilizing our voice for. I also always advise counseling in cannabis, because in that whole spectrum, we are opening up a subconscious, knowing that there's other healing modalities that go along with the use of cannabis.
Yes.
That's always appropriate in patient care, physical therapy, sitting down with a counselor, being able to express and release emotion. It allows us to feel, and so that's what I always have been advocating with also.
Oh, it's wonderful, because we do here in Utah, we have a psilocybin task force, which has legislation on the Hill as well. And a lot of patients who've advocated with us, once they do start consuming cannabis, start to have that spiritual awakening and opening, and they start their healing journey, their healing process, and they really start to understand that their symptoms, their physical symptoms, are actually related to their emotional state and well-being. And when we start going down not just a symptom relief type of therapy approach, that we're looking for really whole body health, and that does mean by mind and spirit and body, kind of all of that kind of coming together. So I do love that about plant medicine, that it does give us that opportunity, where I think pharmaceuticals, they kind of numb us in that spiritual growth. They can really, not to poo-poo on all pharmaceuticals, there's a time and a place for them, but yeah.
But it's integrating all aspects of it, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual.
Yes.
I always look at it like a three-legged stool. If you're missing one, it's not going to be sturdy. You need to have all three bases to have a true and really complete and whole healing process. Zach also wanted to mention that terpenes and flavonoids also, play a role in the I can't talk today. Synergistic
Yes.
Effect of the entourage effect. So the ineffable is what woke up mindfulness in my life.
Yeah.
Is another thing.
So yes, I mean, all those things play a big part. Education, I think, is a big component. I know that's why you're doing what you're doing, Shelby. Is there's still a lot of stigma attached to cannabis, plant medicine as a whole, and one of the spaces that have a hard time, I think, is the medical arena at times, because I think it's hard for some of those in the medical profession to think that, well, maybe a patient might have a better understanding of this substance than they do, and it might be a little bit of ego. What have you experienced? You probably have run the gamut in your profession, from people who are very open and receptive and on board to those who are not and think quite the contrary, that we're all just crazy and it's all in our heads. What have you?
I've definitely experienced both. Usually with patients, I feel like there is, this fear that's attached, us bringing these conversations into hospital settings and facilities. Assisted living, that is a huge one that the geriatric population can use great knowledge and understanding of this. I feel like there has been a fear that's been attached. For me, I've just been so open with my story and have been able to, conversate on a different level, and just recognizing that they are needing comfort. So a lot of it, nurses, healthcare professionals, we are consuming. Psilocybin is also huge out here. That is going to be the next boom that the cannabis industry will start to take over. So we also need to be advocating for processing and integrating ourselves, safe consumption, because that we will start to see an increase of psychosis. And it goes with that spiritual component again. So just allowing, these open conversations, even with cannabis, how do we integrate ourselves back after having such, profound experiences? Where's the comfort? Where's the quality? But I have noticed, healthcare professionals out here and nurses, they have to just close the door within a patient room. And if they're seeing, a patient can utilize this, they'll advocate for that, but it's very kind of hush hush. We are starting to see a few more presentations be brought into educational platforms out here in hospital settings, especially
Nice.
for seizure patients, TBI, all of the head trauma kind of things also. So yeah, I've definitely had mix. I'm grateful that I've had so many people that support.
Yes. I do appreciate the shift that's happened. Drew knows, because we go way back 10 years it's shifted. There's been more acceptance, not as much as I thought. I thought we'd be a little bit further on. There was a time there was just like 7 to 8 states were coming online, and then it just seemed things just slowed down. Once Sessions was in, everything just sort of slowed down. It felt like it went backwards, and now we're in the middle of this tug of war with the two parties in DC. So they're not even paying attention to this issue. They're not going to pay attention to this issue. They could barely get a Speaker of the House elected. So I worry about our space. There's so many issues that are going on. The synthetics, I know that you are definitely having the same problem in your state with synthetics as we are here, as they are not just across the country, but even globally. I know that there are issues in other countries with this stuff, and it just doesn't feel like there's much guidance and leadership with our elected officials on this topic.
There's really not, and it is like, these groups and each of us standing in our position on how we can stand up and just, give our love to what a patient is utilizing,
Right.
That's definitely making a difference.
Agreed. Well, I'm hoping that more conversations happen. Do you watch much of the legislation that happens in your state? Is it something that you guys need to focus on? Or are you guys at a point where your legislation is looking pretty steady?
We do have a truce that is out here also.
Mhm.
And we were able just to fight for a patient. She was consuming cannabis during her pregnancy, so DCS
Okay.
was all involved in those things, but we were able to come and pass that, and all charges, things like that were dropped. So it's really
That's
taking a group, in these advocating positions to just stand up and present, each case individually. Absolutely.
It's true. And that goes to our point too, right, Drew? This session. And I had a couple of lobbyists who had shared with me how important it was that the patients' voices are heard and that they keep speaking up. And it's because of patients and our patient advocates. I mean, Shelby, I consider you a patient advocate, are speaking up about our needs and showing up in committee hearings. I know several of our people on this Zoom call right now, and I call it in studio, whatever, but in our Zoom, I have actually been in these committee hearings and been on the board during the health department and the ag department listening in. And I think that's super important that we don't get lazical about these policies and about rulemaking, because there's still things that we need to keep kind of a watchful eye on, to make sure that we're getting what we truly need, because there is no oversight. We're in this gray zone. And I think it's very lazy for us to say, oh, you'll do right by me. I trust you, industry. I trust you, corporation, to do right by me. Their bottom line and our bottom line are definitely not the same thing. They're looking at quarterly reports, and we just want to get out of bed. So we need clean medicine, Anyway, I want to share a little, Drew, was there any more that you wanted to share on this point? Because I was going to take us somewhere else.
No, I just think that, what we're seeing here in Utah is not unique, especially with these I cannot talk today, synthetics and degradants. But I think it's important to point out, I don't know if you've been following the news, but Oregon, their legislators are actually taking the initiative, because in their law, they've written in that, synthetic derived cannabinoids just don't belong in the program. So they actually were able to recall contaminated products. Yeah. And so that's what it looks like when a state puts patients first. health and the patients as their priority. That's what that looks like. I guess we can only dream and
I like
wish.
that approach. I do. I'm of the opinion, like, we can stick with the 11 natural that we've identified, the
Yeah,
11 natural cannabinoids. Beyond that, if we're wanting to introduce things into the market, I think it needs to go through a research. And from my understanding, that is a bit of the pitch that they're trying to do and create here in Utah. You never know. These are the ideas behind the scenes. Whether they make it to fruition, we don't know. But in
yeah,
my opinion, that's the pathway forward. If you want to add a new synthetic to the mix, you need to research it, identify if it causes harm to the human body and cells before we introduce it into the market. Patients are not guinea pigs.
mm-mm.
They're just not. Whole plant access has been proven for thousands of years to be safe and effective, and the safety index is phenomenal. The synthetics, however, we have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah,
And we've never had somebody die from cannabis. And now we have a report of somebody dying from Delta 8. I contend that it's not necessarily Delta 8, but the practice in the extraction, there might be other things going on. But we've got to be careful and not let these state agencies pretend like they're the FDA.
yeah.
They know nothing about
Well, and
cannabis.
I've seen I don't know if you saw this report. We could also talk about the Delta 6A through 10As.
Oh, yeah.
You know, those degradants. I saw an article from a study suggesting that can promote cancer, rectal cancer, in rats, in all the lab testing. So, you know, of course, this is in labs, but again,
Right.
when they say we don't have any studies, we don't know. Well, the studies we do know shows that, you know, it's carcinogenic, it's cancer causing. And
All
so,
the
you
more
know,
reason for them
yeah,
not to be on the market, for sure.
no,
Right.
yeah,
Right. So that we still have a long ways to go. I do worry about when we think about adult use that we don't think about making sure that things are medically safe. I mean, the whole reason why we have medical cannabis programs in the country are for patients. This was a patient. It wasn't a ruse. People really do need clean access to medicine. So I hope
yeah,
our state, I hope Shelby State and all the others continue to work on it. It's a problem. I also got a call earlier this week from somebody in Florida that was asking for some help and telling me what was going on there. So we've got to organize. We got to come together and really start, you know, pushing back on some of these things that don't make sense for us.
and as Zach is saying, we need standardization and legit testing here locally. You know, I was
Exactly.
talking to another cannabis advocate in our community, but just we were just blowing our minds about how Utah only has one lab,
I know.
and that's a state lab
Oh.
that is also responsible for all the other agricultural department laboratory work as well.
So there's a state lab and then there's only one private lab.
Okay.
So yeah, so we have like 1.5, but like you just noted, the state lab has all the other duties of testing all the other agriculture.
Okay.
So it's still extremely concerning that we have.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Shelby.
Can I add in really fast?
Yes.
And maybe there's an integration with even, will you put your seatbelt on, please? Maybe there's even an integration because I know that labs out here, it's kind of gone underground too and kind of a hush hush. So products are being sent for testing, and if there's fungus or some contaminant in there, they're still marking it off as safe because of this rush. So if there's a way that we can even integrate into safe practices and safe protocols, you know, speaking up against how it's kind of deterred us from giving that safety, because, you know, like autoimmune patients, number one, if they can't have fungus, you know, those things increase their autoimmune disorders. But I am seeing that it's kind of been this hush hush out here, even with lab studies, that, you know, they'll bring in the product and something tests not good, they're still giving that back so that they can distribute.
Yeah. And we're seeing that here in Utah too. I know that there's been talk about, you know, in Utah taking this stuff out, but don't they also want to, give a grace period of like a year for them to get through all the contaminated product and no recalls or anything? Just, we could sell through our product and maybe next year you could have clean stuff. So, they recognize that it's dangerous. We don't know, but they're going to still allow them to sell it, right? That, like,
Exactly.
how gross
So-
is that?
So for people to give context, last year in September, we were alerted that there were contaminants in our products and we were going to be seeing some labels. We call them contaminants and degradants. They call them naturally occurring cannabinoids, which they are not. And so, for all this time, when we found out that this was happening, we brought in subject matter experts. They gave their opinions. These should not be in the medical program. And they hummed and hawed and said, this is out of our hands. They ignored the legislative law and said, you need to give us more authority at the legislature. So now here we sit at the legislature in SB 91. There is proposed line that it's supposed to defer the power to the health department to be able to recall anything. By the time we actually get to recall the synthetics that are in the market, it will be a year. It will be a year. Now, how is that acting swift in the best interest of public health? They don't treat medical cannabis patients with the true care that they should. They're allowing vendors, they're allowing companies to put all that tainted product into the market until it's depleted so they don't lose money. There's not a care about what the patients are actually consuming into their bodies and in their lungs. That's what I have a problem with. And I think, everybody who's affiliated with Truth and on
Can
this
you
call-
imagine if the government let Johnson & Johnson continue selling all their asbestos baby powder just so they didn't experience any loss to their bottom line? Like, it's ridiculous. And so that's something that we could still work on, right? We could still push or advocate, or is that signed, sealed, delivered?
I don't know. Well, this is why we as Truce have been advocating for the past 6 months for patients to stay away from Delta 6A-10A, because for this specific reason. The state, the government, these vendors, these companies are not going to look out for you. They're not going to look out for you. That's why Truce exists. That's why Shelby does what she does. Education is the key. You have to educate yourself. You have to not just educate yourself, but those around you in your social circle. They need to understand what's going on. So many people who are affiliated with Truce started asking the bud tenders about Delta 6A and 10A. And how many of you were doing the educating? I know a lot of you were. I know Alicia was. I know that Zach was. I know another Zach was. I know there was a lot of us that were actually educating the store help. And that's not a bad thing, because we're all going to get information received at different times. You know what I mean? But the concerning thing is
but
that
the bud
state
tenders
agency,
are also being educated from the industry lobbyists,
from their own,
the people delivering the
boss.
product.
Exactly.
They're the drug reps.
Exactly.
There's a model for everything. So
Mhm.
they're getting the info from the drug reps, and
Mhm.
well, we're the patients advocacy group saying, well, wait a minute, your drug ain't as clean as you pretend it to be.
Right. And that's the thing that I think I keep sitting well with in my heart as more and more of these studies come out, as more and more subject matter experts are feeling emboldened, especially when patients like myself are calling them and saying, look, we need you. I'll be a voice, I'll push back, but I need the science and the research at my side so that we can show to legislators and regulators and vendors that what they're doing isn't ethical. And if we are truly going to end prohibition, we need to do it appropriately. We're not ending prohibition just to create a whole, whatever this market is. This is sort of a weird in between FDA approved and completely the Wild West.
Am I also weird in, so, I'm a very energetic person.
Mhm.
So I could sense the energies and intentions, but there's an animosity from the state, and it makes sense because the people that at the state that are in charge of the program were the same people that were in opposition to the medical cannabis program from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I almost get a sense like, well, they got their program, who cares, whatever, but the industry people, they want to make their money. It's like I sense a hostility still as a
Towards
patient.
patients?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
we're the last thought because we're the bastards that force this on them. So it's almost like they're gonna make it hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't make
'Cause-
sense. It truly doesn't. So I sent some white papers and research and a few webinars to Utah Medical Association, trying to help educate them that this is a concern. If they are going to push back on medical cannabis or concerned about medical cannabis, instead of just being a pearl clutcher and saying, oh, what about the children? I'm giving you legitimate reasons, scientific reasons to be concerned and ally with patients to make sure that we're producing the kind of clean products that you would want a patient to consume. But we don't hear the medical association coming out and saying anything. We don't hear the nurses association saying anything. Like, where are these medical people? Why isn't there any outcry as to this type of practice? If it's called spice, would they do something about it? Because effectively, we know as much about these synthetic cannabinoids as we did about spice, but we were quick to pull that stuff off the shelf.
Yeah, if it was
All
called
these
Spice, Gail Rosika and the Eagle Forum partnered with, the Utah Medical Association and the Sutherland Institute would have a $1 million campaign getting the stuff running ballot initiatives, think of the children. Where are they on
Right.
the, it's a synthetic. That's exactly what Spice was.
I think the misnomer is that they think synthetic is safe because they are being pitched that this is a light. This is THC light. These are not the same kind of the evil THC. It's synthetic, so it's not as harmful. We can control it. That's the kind of garbage and pitch that I hear some of those vendors putting out there. That it's less psychoactive. You can function on it. It's not going to do this to you. They're like these bold claims, and that they don't. I think they mask what is actually going on so that legislators and regulators are kind of duped. They're not subject matter experts. They're just.
Well, I say it all the time. A legislator is only as smart as the last person that talked to them.
Kind of harsh, but yeah. on the subject, right?
But I mean, yes. So that's the sassy bitch in me talking. But the truth is, they're amateurs. We have a
Right.
part-time legislature. That's the way that our legislature is set up. So, we have Senator Vickers, who's a pharmacist by trade. And then,
Yeah.
the person sitting next to him is a real estate agent. And the person
Exactly.
next to them sells Scent City candles. And the person
Right.
next to them works at 7-Eleven. And the person next to them grows alfalfa on the farm. Like, and I'm not knocking that, but not everybody is an expert.
Agreed.
But we have a lot of people that kind of, what is that, Dunning-Kruger effect? Is that what they call it?
Mhm.
Where we have a lot of amateurs who think they are experts. So yeah, they're only as smart as the lobbyists giving them the information, because that's their
and
education
oftentimes-
sessions.
Agreed. And by default, some people are thrown into roles that they don't feel quite adequate to fill. I know a certain senator who, though he's a pharmacist, I know feels truly overwhelmed by the cannabis topic because I mean, we can beat him up all day long for sure, but it's an overwhelming topic
But that's an elephant that he chose to choke on. He tried to eat the whole entire thing himself. He wouldn't share it with anybody else. I'm King God, the kingpin of the Utah cartel from the very beginning when he tried to undercut us. And they gave it to him because, well, he's a pharmacist. He's a medical expert. So, and he won't relinquish control either.
A lot of the pharmacists say that in this state who are in the cannabis space. I've heard a lot of egos coming from some of the pharmacists, and it's not just him as the legislator. Some of these people who are in the dispensaries think that they have an advantage over others who have been working and dealing with this. So there is a lot of ego tripping going on in this space, and it's difficult. It's difficult because I think in the end, patients are always the collateral damage when things aren't up to snuff. We are always the ones that are falling short on it's too expensive. We can't get the products we need. They're not the quality we need. The pricing's out of range. And then we have to deal with this infighting with legislators and regulators and vendors.
Yeah. And you
Anyway.
could definitely tell they're not users either. So they're not educating from an informed place because their ego is so huge. You know, there's no way they've used cannabis because there's definitely some ego deconstruction that needs to take place with some of these people.
Yeah.
A little deflation of the big old head there. Anyways.
I guess we all get a little of that, right? Well, let me shift gears and stop beating up on the woes of our space, and let's celebrate some of the highs, and pun intended, some of the good things that are coming. Yeah, let's celebrate. A fun event that's coming up, and some of you who are following us on our TRUCE community page and on our regular page, next week, American Pot Story is going to be making its world premiere here at Slam Dance here in Utah, which is kind of a cool little thing. Documentarists, is that a word? I just made it up.
It is now.
Okay, perfect. Did a story on Oaksterdam. Oaksterdam University is the first cannabis pot university in the whole country. And it talks about the birth of that and how and why it came to be. And it talks about the raid that occurred. The bottom line, the whole documentary is really about policy and advocacy shaping what policy turns out and looks like.
I would love to see a cannabis agriculture education program like Oaksterdam up at Utah State. It's got the perfect program for it too, right?
Yeah, it would be. I think our Kyle Egbert is from up there. So for those who do follow us, the movie is going to be premiering this Friday. The first showing is this Friday, the 20th at 10 o'clock up in Park City. If you see our poster, it has the listing for that. And then on Tuesday of next week, we'll be hosting a panel right before the premiere at 4 o'clock of the movie. So our Vice Chair Val will be moderating. I'll be on the panel. We will have Diane Goldstein from LEAP. LEAP is law enforcement in partnership, I think is what it's called. And then Oaksterdam will have Dale Sky Jones, who is the chancellor there at Oaksterdam. She'll be here, and Jeff, and they're both will help tell the story about what went on here. And let me tell you a cool thing for those of you who are watching. Oaksterdam gifted TRUCE a scholarship that we could award to one of our industry players we felt was deserving of this little effort. And so, of course, many of you guys know April at Terra Health. She has been a longtime supporter. She is just a friend to everybody trying to help further her own education. And we felt like she was definitely a worthy recipient of that scholarship. So Oaksterdam was able to provide that for her. We're going to have her on next week. She can tell us a little bit about how the school is going and what she thinks of it. We're hoping to partner with Oaksterdam to provide scholarships to our community throughout the year. We want to make sure that we can award that. We want those who are interested in the cannabis space to have really good education about cannabis.
Is so cool.
Like it is. I really thought it was a wonderful opportunity for all of us. For TRUCE to host the panel and develop our relationship with Oaksterdam a little more. But also provide that extended education to our Utah community. We want to help improve the program by making sure employees who go into the cannabis space have the education they really should get before they get too far involved. So that will be a fun little topic, but it coincided with what we were talking about here is education seems to be lacking. And that's one thing that TRUCE wants to continue to try to provide opportunities for. So we will be developing more scholarship programs with other entities, another group called Focus. They have some education too that they want to partner with us to help provide to our community. So we're going to get a few schools Donating scholarships will also be going to industry leaders, asking them to participate and donate to TRUCE's scholarship fund so that they have a pool of people that they can be employing afterwards too. So it's a reciprocating type of scenario. So I was really excited to hear that, and I wanted to share it with you guys because we all know April and love her. So
Yay.
when she comes next week, make sure you show her a lot of love and support. I love those who take a stab at this, who try to get into the cannabis industry, and not just the industry, but try to help build community. I think that's what I loved about April and the ethos that her company is trying to do. Same thing with Dragonfly. Dragonfly has that same sort of community ethos, which Truce really appreciates and loves. So I'm hoping that we get to continue this type of outreach efforts as we move forward.
That's awesome. I'm excited about that.
Me too. Me too. It will be fun to have her on and chat a little more about that. So I am auditing some of Oaksterdam's classes. I'm doing one right now. If we're going to give out scholarships, I got to know what we're giving out. And so I'm going through that process, and I really have enjoyed the first couple of weeks, getting to know other students from across the country and the world. I think we have somebody who's in our group who's from France. So it will be fun to hear those perspectives. As you guys remember, we brought somebody on a few weeks back who shared his experience as a patient in France as well. So it's, the cannabis family is big and large and stretches all across the world. So it's cool. Anyway, I've been doing all the talking. Does anybody want to ask a question or throw some topics out that we can chat about this afternoon? Really? Alicia, come on. Are you telling me you don't have anything to add? Come on.
I'm just, I'm intaking right at the moment.
You're taking. That's all good. That's all good. I'll share another thing that happened right before I came online then. Let a lot of you guys know about Wyoming. You know that I've done some work up there. I just got word that Wyoming is moving forward on a reciprocity bill and a decrim bill that's looking pretty exciting. So I might be going up there to help them push that bill a little further along. I love watching other states continue to work on cannabis policy. It's pretty exciting. Yeah, Zach, go ahead, friend.
Sorry, what were your guys' thoughts on, like, say, a tolerance break? I don't really get super high anymore, ever. And I still need to medicate, but I also don't want to be in pain. So what are your guys' experiences when you don't really notice the effects you need from the terpene profiles you're getting?
Do you want to go, Drew?
That's a very good question. Because again, I'm also in the same boat. I've been a user for coming up almost on 10 years. And so and needing to dose at high doses for my condition. So, understanding that, I'm in that same conundrum because for me to go off this, which is my primary medication, I have to go back at least on something. So that would mean opiates and benzos. And I'm not sure I want to, even in the short term for, say 2 to 3 weeks, like having beat the addiction and needing, like, that scares me. So I don't know. So I've just never gone on a tolerance break. One thing my medical practitioner, the one who gave me my license or whatever the fetch is called.
Your QMP.
Yeah, QMP, that's the word. He was saying that vitamin D, when you have vitamin D deficiency, that your body also has a harder time synthesizing THC. So if you are taking vitamin D supplements, that will help combat some of the built up tolerance that you're using, so you can, feel the effects again.
I always encourage patients who are thank you for that, Drew. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I have encouraged patients when they start cannabis, they also need to onboard magnesium. Magnesium is mostly what patients are deficient of. And so vitamin D for sure too. I think he's
especially during the winter.
Yeah. But Zach's out in the space enough that he probably gets enough vitamin D from the sun. But I don't know your condition, Zach. Please be mindful that me and Drew are not medical professionals. I think I need to throw that out there. This is just patient peer-to-peer mentoring and sharing our experience. When I have run into situations when cannabis wasn't working, because it's done the same thing for me, I can't take a tolerance fake in the sense that I'll just become more and more symptomatic. So I can't do a cold break. What I have done is decreased my cannabis just to get through the symptom relief portion. But that's when I learned about onboarding magnesium and making sure that I'm watching my fluid intake. There's a lot of things that we forget to do healthcare, and we get lazy and we think, oh, I just need to smoke my weed and I'm okay. That's kind of a lazy approach, and you have to start to rethink, well, what other things am I not doing? Are you doing meditation? Are you doing breathing exercises? Are you getting and eating the proper nutrition you should be? What about your sleep? There's a lot of other things that need to be looked at before I go, oh, I need to take a tea break. You might need to back down from cannabis because you probably haven't realized that you started to uptake and increase your consumption, trying to mask and at the symptoms that were kind of leading up to giving you the warning signals. So, when you start to feel like you're not having the best experience with cannabis, after you try to, a different cultivar, because those are always our first go-to things, right? Oh, I got to try a different cultivar. I'm not getting the same experience. Make sure you look at those other things. And this is where, like, working with someone like Shelby or April has got coaches at her clinic. I know Valerie, who works for TRUCE, also does some coaching at April's clinic. Those are the type of people that can help you track what you're doing and consuming and encourage you to pay attention to your healthcare needs. We're lazy. We have gotten into this Western philosophy of take 2 pills and call me in the morning, and we think that is healthcare. And so when you come to plant medicine, you do have to put a lot more work into your body, into your healthcare, into your nutrition, your sleep, your mental health, your physical health. All of it needs to be in more harmony. You just can't be lazy. Go ahead, Alicia, hon, you got your hand up.
For me personally, I try to keep my medicating to a specific amount of time every day, like a certain time every day. So like every 4 to 6 hours, depending on how I'm feeling. If I feel like not doing what I need it to do, then I will usually just take a little less during my medication times, and do that for a couple weeks, and then up my dose probably a couple weeks later. That's usually what I would do personally. That's how it works for me. And then meditation in between I had no clue how good meditation was until I started all this, until I actually came into the cannabis circle and became a cannabis patient myself and did revival and all these things. I don't know, Zach, I would suggest maybe meditation, a lot of time thinking to yourself. I don't know how to explain, but it's like you have to be within yourself. And it really helps.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think that's Shelly is offering this info too. And I'm going to add just a touch of a caveat to it, because I generally don't promote Kratom. And there's different people pronounce it different ways, but Kratom can be addictive. So that's just sort of a warning I want to throw out there before I
It's also hella expensive now.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I just know that it can be very much habit forming. Shelly, please. Oh, yes, Shelly, please share what you have. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I've been on Kratom for about, I guess, a good decade. I've had to go off of it for my surgeries because it can make you more sensitive when it comes to anesthesia. They have to adjust for that. In the 2 weeks going off of it, because it is a cousin to the caffeine, to the coffee plant, it's mainly addiction to caffeine. So I will up my coffee and tea and even take Excedrin. And by doing that, I avoid all of those addiction problems that people have talked about. When I have gone off of it, people talk about roaming pains. Now, I know everybody's different, But for me, just the pain I have comes back.
Mhm.
And it's pretty severe. So if I wasn't on kratom, I know that I would be in a pain clinic. So for me to be addicted to a half a teaspoon of kratom every 4 hours is not anything compared to those pills.
See, and that's definitely something I probably support.
Yeah,
I
thank
just
you
want
for
to make sure
sharing
that
that.
people understand that, because there are those who are opiate dependent and that do not realize that, and it hits on the same receptors, and they fall victim to being, kratom addicts. So be mindful. There are other tools, Zach, I think is what we're supporting. There's other tools than just cannabis to get some relief for you.
Yeah.
So is there another question in the chat? Do we have any questions online, Drew?
No, I think that's it. There's one thing I wanted to talk about.
Can I?
Oh, who?
Yes. Was that you,
Shelby.
Shelly? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
who-
can I just add in with tolerance breaks, we need to also be mindful if it's just cut cold turkey. I would suggest just starting to lower, maybe just consume once a day. We are noticing that when someone's just stopping cold turkey, night terrors increase, anxiety, depression definitely increase. So it is, listening to your internal self and where your other to supplement. You're exactly right with the magnesium and the vitamin C, the meditation, diet wise, all those things are applicable when helping to balance back. And especially when our ECS has so much in there, it does need this clearance. So tolerance breaks are really helpful. Just being mindful, cutting cold turkey. We are seeing, an increase of the night terrors, PTSD, flashbacks, all those things play a big component in just cutting cold turkey. So even if it's just minimalizing consumption to once a day, finding some you time, adding in the supplements with vitamins, most definitely. That does play a big part in there too.
Thank you, Nurse Shelby. Appreciate that. Hope that helps,
Sweet.
Zach.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, you bet. What were you going to share, Drew?
So this is something that an issue that I just want the community to start talking about it. It's a blog post that I'm actually working on.
Sure.
But so, I was going through, I was trying to figure out how to get my husband to become a caregiver so he could pick up my medicine, and then just realizing how expensive and ridiculous the process is for caregivers to get their card. That's another thing we could talk about. But the thing I want to talk about today was something underneath it, and I got a screen grab of it, and I'm just going to go ahead and share here.
Perfect.
But again, it goes to the energy of what I was saying earlier about it. There's really an energy of hostility. Like the state of Utah has really not gone to the effort to protect the patients. They've protected everybody else. They've regulated everything else, but not a lot has gone to the patient's benefit. And this is one of them. Are there renter or employee protections for qualified patients? And they actually say there are renter, or because medical cannabis users are not a protected class, there are no renter protections for those who choose to possess and use medical cannabis. So I, challenged the notion of the very notion of that. One of the biggest challenges we face here in Utah is the lack of housing protections. And if Utah is saying that medical cannabis users are not a protected class, there's nothing written in state law to protect them because they agree with that.
Right.
So to begin with, we first have to acknowledge the state of Utah has already recognized and mandated 2 separate state agencies to regulate and distribute medical cannabis to patients who have state-approved qualified conditions and disabilities that are prescribed medical cannabis by a licensed medical provider to treat medical conditions and or disability. So as the state of Utah says, medical users aren't a protected class, but disability itself is a protected class, one that's also protected by the American with Disabilities Act. And so I think this is one that we need to bring to the attention. medical cannabis is your medicine. That's what you use to treat your condition. Let's use another example. You're paralyzed with your disability, you need a wheelchair. Well, guess what? They have to make accommodations for your disability, meaning ramps, large enough hallways, doors, and all that to accommodate. We're a civilization. It's unfortunate that that didn't get passed until the 90s, but we're a civilization that has a set laws to protect patients' rights. And there's no other situation, medical, your boss or your landlord can't say, well, you can't use an inhaler, you can't use a nebulizer, you can't, there's a certain drawn line on autonomy. And so other states have written into their laws to protect patients because they recognize that medical cannabis to treat their conditions and their disability is a protected right. So I think we need to start advocating for that. Again, they're not going to just give it to us. This is Utah. We have to claw for every single bit and piece of self-dignity and human worth and within the laws. So I think this is something we need to start working on.
It's a good topic. It's a good question. And I think I was just checking. I think we have one of our board members who is on with us who might be able to give a perspective, because as an owner of rental property, he does have people who are going to be in his rental homes, and it is a situation of what do we ask? I mean, what is the right thing here to manage? Gary Parker is on our board. He also is, Gary, I don't know, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you are with us still, I don't know if you pop off.
I just unmuted myself.
Would you mind sharing with us a little bit of your perspective, because you do have rental properties. You are a landowner who rents. What is it? How do you navigate this? How do you navigate this? You are pro cannabis, you're on our board, you support this, and yet we are running into this, and it is, who has rights here? And this is a conversation. This is something that we need to discuss. So I would love to hear your perspective, even playing devil's advocate. I hope.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's really simple. Excuse me. It's really simple for me. I don't allow burning like cigarettes or burning of cannabis inside the building. If but vaping is okay. Of either they can go outside and smoke. If burning cannabis became legal for patients in Utah, I would allow it.
Oh, you would allow it?
Yeah, I would. It does. If they were patients, yes. I just feel like patients should be given that liberty. It does. Over time, is that going to increase costs for tenants moving in and out because of odors and things? So maybe there would have to be some slight charge for that. But I mean, cigarette smoke is much different than cannabis smoke. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
So that's my first.
But even that's still hypothetical, because
Gary.
Utah law already prohibits combustion. So, the law is written into to the benefit of landowners, landlords. So, but yeah, and also I'm going to take this to employment protections as well.
Sure.
Absolutely. Your boss doesn't get to tell you what medications you get to take. And we're talking about impairment here. So, obviously if you're operating, heavy machinery, driving one of those building sized bulldozers up at, Kennecott, obviously you're not going to be smoking while on duty, just as you wouldn't take an opiate or a benzo while on duty. We already have laws and regulations put into place with intoxication while on duty or on the clock or whatnot. But zero tolerance policies are a remnant of the drug war, which we've ended, but we're still letting them be in place in employment. I think the state of Utah recognizes cannabis as a legitimate medicine for legitimate disabilities. And so we should be protecting patients and requiring our employers, even the private ones, to make a reasonable accommodation. And that's the word, reasonable accommodations. And zero tolerance is not a reasonable accommodation. So
It's not. Well, and there's a lot of areas we're going to have to continue advocating for. There's ongoing conversations, and I'm glad you brought them up. Thank you, Gary, for sharing that.
Yeah,
I hope
thank
I
you,
didn't
Gary.
put you on the spot too much, but it is good to get
You're
input.
welcome.
It's good. So, yeah. Anybody else want to share any thoughts or questions or concerns? We're coming up on the hour.
Today's thoughts are brought to you by Cindy Cheese from the Betty Vape Company.
Is that what
They're
you
one
got
of the
going
safe
on?
brands. Yeah, that's what I got going on right now.
I have got the new dragonfly pods. Have you guys seen the dragonfly pods?
I love them.
I like these. I like the way they draw. I really do like these.
And
So,
I love that little magnet click, like the neurodivergent me. It's
like
when I'm
Slightly. Drop it in.
when it clicks and it vibrates, it's a stimming.
I like that it shuts off. You do a 15-second pull and then it shuts off.
Yeah.
I like that.
I do
Zach,
like
you were
some of
gonna
the
say
new
something?
devices. I'll tell you though, it's still hard for me to do carts. I will always love flour. It just doesn't burn the same way. Go ahead, Zach, friend. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I loved how when I went to Montana, they had the adult use as well as the medical market. I would love it if we could actually take things from the other states that are doing well and implement them, such as even Nevada, you can gift flour, you can just give away medicine. Like if we could get to where we're not just only focused on just money, but focused on compassion.
Yeah.
And just ways that we can look at the other states and say, look what they're doing. Let's use those things and get that money or get that compassion. And it just gets me pumped. Anyway, love you guys. Appreciate all you do.
Oh, thank you, Zach. We love you too. It takes staying involved and sharing with our legislators what's happening in other states. I know when we've had this conversation about the synthetic talks, I've been sharing with lobbyists and other vendors the language from Colorado and the language from Oregon. These are progressive cannabis states who are looking at this synthetic and they're shutting it down, saying this is putting the cart before the horse. We need to slow down and be more thoughtful in our policy making. So I'm hoping that our legislators do that, exactly that, Zach, that they do start taking examples from other states that are good and that are healthy. One of the things that I keep saying repeatedly is the next step in patient advocacy are standards and regulations. That is absolutely the next step that we need to go. And we have to drag regulators and legislators and vendors kicking and screaming if it needs to be. But the medical healthcare professionals, the patients, the scientists, the researchers, that's where we all need to ally up and make sure that we move forward and not let industry dictate our pathway. It needs to be driven by the people in the medical arena. So,
and I want to say though, one of the things we do need to be cautious of that we've seen in other states that have started with a medical program and then added an adult use or a recreational program to run in parallel. It always kills the medical program. We've yet to see a state that has successfully kept the quality of their medical program intact while running a parallel recreational program. We lose the diversity of the products, the price goes up, and then they want to cater to their money again becomes the big evil,
right?
And so a lot of the strains that are good for patients that have the diversity of all the spectrum of the terpenes and all whatnot, those go away for the high potent THC. This is going to F you up because that's what sells in the recreational stores. And so, I would love to see Utah open up to adult use, but I think we also should be very mindful to make sure that we protect the medical nature of the medical program and keep
Yeah.
that intact. So that's, I'll step off that soapbox now. I saw it happen
I
in
agree with
California,
you.
my home state. California's medical program was amazing a few years back, and then they effed it up.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think Shelby has that same similar experience that she's seeing in her state too. We've got to fight for those medical programs, Drew.
Yeah.
I just agree with you, and Shelby's right there with you saying we got to be careful with the this high THC thing is just not. It's not medicine. It's not. There's a time and a place for it. I'm not opposed to adult use. I'm not. I mean, I always say drag
Well,
number
and
5 is for my.
yeah,
my
well, like you
medical
said, there's a time and place for high
Right.
THC. It serves a
Sure.
purpose, but it can't all be THC. You know,
Right.
I love a candy bar, but you can't always eat a candy bar. You know, you have to have diversity and variety of product
Right.
for a medical program. So,
Agreed.
but we're coming up
Thank
here to the end, I think, right?
Yep. Thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you.
420 session. You guys are the best. You make this community so
Thanks,
good.
guys.
Thank you, Shelby, for joining. Right back at you, lady. Zach, Alicia, Kyle, all of our people in the audience. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening in. Please
Thank
join us
you.
next week for our event on the Tuesday, the 24th, and for our 420 session. Come back, meet us next week. We're going to be talking about more things. It will always be here. We love you guys. Take care. Be good to each other. be good to
Thank
yourself.
you.
Also,
Thank
check
you.
out my new podcast. Just dropped an episode of the Pothead Veteran. It's on
Oh,
all podcasting platforms. So go ahead. Did a great interview with Christine. So hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. Bye all.
Thank
Thanks,
Have a good night.
everybody.
Hollywood Squares. Love you guys.
Love ya. Bye-bye.